Hello and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I'm your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me as always is the wonderful Kris Ingersoll. Kris, how you doing tonight?
So good, Randy. It's spooky season, man, and I'm really stoked to kind of start our spooky content tonight with a story that means the world to me, and a guest that means the world to you. So it's going to be a good night on the pod. How are you, brother?
Oh, I'm doing incredibly well, and honestly, if there's anything that's spooky, Kris, it is just your ability to impress all of our guests. You've been doing the rounds over at the Pop Break. You've been hitting pods like Should I Go See It, etc. And, I think the podcasting world is just falling for you, man. You've got a great voice and greater insights. And I'm just really happy I get to sit down with you almost every week and record a pod. It's an exciting time.
Oh, dear. I'm glad we don't have video content or they'd all see me blushing. Thanks, buddy.
You may have noticed I got a little intense with that description, Kris, because since I met you last October, we occasionally joke about our whirlwind bromance. And listen, I have several treasured male friendships in my life, friendships that I've built over time, but I've only had one other male friendship that swept me up in such a whirlwind that I used the term bromance. It's only happened twice in my entire life. And the first time it happened was with my very good friend, Jonathan Corte-Real, who's joining us tonight. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good. Wow, what a red carpet rollout for us. That's awesome, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm definitely excited to be on the show. This is great, especially for like the spooky Halloween season. I just went apple picking I think a week or so ago with my girl, and since then I'm like, okay, it's fall time. I can get with this,
Yes.
So yeah, I'm
you
excited.
both looked incredible, by the way. I saw those photos. Yeah,
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You gotta take the apple picking photos. It's a requirement of the picking.
It is, but they've got these whole rows of all these apples, and it's like, I don't know if these are going to be good for like apple crisp or whatever. So we're just like taking random bites of apples and then just, but it's a good day. We had good weather. We were up in Amesbury. So it was a good day. So I'm fully in fall mode right now.
Nice.
Now, I've got to indulge myself a little bit more, John. This is going to sound like a self-serving question, but it actually is going to bring us back to our topic for the day, back into the spooky season. But we met quite a few years ago now. You were doing some student teaching at my school. You are now a full-fledged English teacher like myself. We've both been on the job for a long time. But when you were first student teaching, one thing you always have to do is you get sent around. Like you'll observe a lot of different classrooms. And that was how I first met you. And I was wondering if you could just tell the story from your perspective of us becoming friends.
Oh, geez, it feels like a million years ago. But well, there was like one teacher I was with, and she was one of those teachers where you just look at and you're like, I'll never be that good. She's just got everything, the full package. I might as well just go work at like some random like restaurant or something. I'm never going to be a teacher. And then I had to like go see different teachers. So I went and I was just like, all right, who's this Randy guy? Let me go by his room. And I walked in and you had just like Poe decorations. You had this like, I'm pretty sure the artist was Alan Lee, this like Lord of the Rings, like old school like poster on your wall. And I was just like, and, like before even saying hello to you and introducing myself, I'm like, did we just become friends? Like this guy sounds just like looks awesome. His room is cool. And you had like Poe books and stuff. And I don't know. I was just like, and I just like sat there and I listened like I was one of the students, you know what I mean? Just like I'm just like I wasn't even taking notes like I was supposed to. So I was just blown away. And it was cool experience.
Yeah, and like meanwhile, from my perspective, I was like, who is this guy who's pulled the Poe book off my shelf and he wants to talk about it? One thing that shocks me in education, being an English teacher, is like sometimes I don't run into as many people as I would expect who are like down to just sit and talk about literature. But it's always been like that with you. You've always had an interest in it. And Poe was the first thing we bonded over. so when I knew we were going to do a Poe episode, I was like, I've got to at least try to get Jonathan Corte-Real on this show. And Kris, I know you planned a little fun Halloween activity for us, but I just want to hit you with a little surprise first, because I know you both love the fall season, the apple picking, the baking, even putting all the pieces together. But you also both have an affinity for costumes. I am someone who's been pretty lame in that department. So I'm gonna go back and hit you with just a quick visual.
It's one of my favorite games, man. I'm stoked.
But the first slide is a present for you, John. And these are some photos you heard us reference on the Crow episode. This is Kris in a couple of different Batman garbs. And John, I'm just curious, as someone who's done some great costumes yourself, what are your thoughts?
Well, first, what comes to thought is the way better jawline than Michael Keaton. So I just want to say that, you fit the cowl nicely. I mean, the Adam West one and is just very retro. Yes, I remember your girl did that. That's the Anne Hathaway, right? Catwoman.
Yeah, you nailed it, brother.
Yeah, man. No, I think they look great. I think they look awesome.
I appreciate the jaw call.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorites was, and it kind of ties into our night. It was the Batman. I mean, I remember reading this when I was like younger. Was the Victorian one, Gotham by Gaslight?
Yeah,
just like that. It's just very like Victorian, very like Poe. Like I love the look, the cowl. I don't know, it just looked so cool back then.
They are writing right now. They're publishing a follow-up series to Gotham by Gaslight called The Kryptonian Age. It's fantastic. I highly recommend.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. Now, Kris, I'm going to call upon you to use a skill that I like to call upon every now and then, but it's been a minute. We're in this audio medium of our audio podcast. I'm going to ask you to please describe a visual that I placed before you. And I'm going to hit you with a couple of my favorite costumes that John has ever put together. So I'm going to have you describe them and give your feedback.
Whoa. Okay, is this both Halloween or is this cosplay?
Yeah, this is no. I don't do cosplay or anything like that. It was 2 years in a row. Alex and Ani, do you like it's like a bracelet company or jewelry company?
Alex and Ani. I once worked at the mall. Come on now.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
They rented out or they owned or something, one of the Newport mansions. And one of my friends, like, it's like one of those, oh, I know a guy who knows a guy, got us like tickets, but you gotta like deck yourself out. So this is what I went as for both of those years. Like everybody in the group like decked themselves out. So
all right, so for the listening podlings at home, let me tell you that I'm looking at Jack Sparrow who outdoes Johnny Depp in terms of just raw sexiness. There's an appeal here as this man leans on the door. He's in full Desmond Hume, chest out. The shirt could not be less buttoned while still being buttoned. I think there's makeup work here, not just good facial hair work and good hair work, but there's makeup work here as well, right? Did you give yourself the Johnny Depp pirate tan?
Well, I'm, naturally Portuguese, so I think I had some sort of leftover tan. I don't even remember. This is going back a while ago.
I don't know. There's something across the bridge of your nose that's
maybe there was
ruddy,
like a tan thing or something. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I can tell you has strong makeup work is the photo immediately adjacent, which couldn't be any more opposite, despite being a Johnny Depp role also. I'm looking at a really, really well-achieved Edward Scissorhands. It's not just well achieved in the costume and makeup; it's the performance, similar to Jack Sparrow and that sexy lean. You're giving this camera blue steel, but it's depressed blue steel. It's like a sad blue steel. It's really strong, man. Who did this makeup for you?
So my buddy's his now wife, but she was the girlfriend at the time. She was just like super into makeup and styling and whatever. And then she's like, "Well, your Captain Jack was so good. We got to do another Johnny Depp character." So it was a toss up between this one or his like Tonto. But I felt that like having a crow on your head would be absolutely random. But I ended up just doing Edward Scissorhands, and she just sat me down, and it was actually pretty awful. Like, and my eyes were all just, you can probably see how like red they are. Like, but actually the the party was a blast, like huge event. Tons of people were there. Everybody was just like decked out in costume. It was the best. Like since then, I don't think I've ever even gone anywhere for Halloween or dressed up, but it was, it was a good time.
I gotta ask, did you make it through the whole night with those scissor hands on, or did you have to ditch them at some point?
I did. I don't think I broke character at all. The only downside was I couldn't eat anything because the scar that went across my lip kind of like sealed my mouth shut a little bit. So I was drinking like, every once in a while. So just through a straw, but I was just like deadpan. I tried to stay character the whole night. Yeah, no.
Amazing.
All right, folks. So I've introduced my two good friends. You've gotten a full history of two of my favorite bromances. But tonight we're here to talk about Poe. So it's not a bromance, folks. It's a POEmance.
Nice. Dad core to the last. All right, people. As I said, it's spooky season, and we're really stoked to kick off our spooky season content. And so tonight, I'm going to put my fellow hosts here through a little bit of a quiz. 10 questions, nothing too scary, not like the math quiz I put Randy through once upon a time. But according to Buzzfeed, there's 5 distinct types of Halloween people. And we're going to find out which one each of you are. Spoiler, I took this quiz earlier today. I know which Halloween I am, and I will tell you at the end. So I'll read the questions out. I'll get an answer from each of you. I'll call on you in turn. We'll register the answers, and we'll find out who's who. Ready to start? All right. Easy to start. What month do you think people should start getting excited for Halloween season? Is it August? September? October? It's always time to celebrate, to be honest. Or never?
All right, I'm gonna go with October just because I feel like it's such a jump. And being a teacher, like we're back into school, I want to like give myself a minute to like, get used to work again and like get back into like fall and then have like that Halloween time. So my answer is October.
I love that September is its own special kind of holiday season for you as a teacher. That's really strong.
Yeah.
Randy, what about you, bud?
I'm torn between the answer I want to give and the answer that I think that the quiz is going for. So I'm going to preface my answer by saying I hate when people get like all up on their high horse about when you can and cannot celebrate a holiday. You want to celebrate Halloween year round? Go for it. You want to set up in August? Go for it. You want to wait till October? Great. You're still going in November? Fine. That being said, I don't have a great track record for like photographic proof of my Halloween and holiday spirit. My previous home that John used to visit once in a while was in a great Halloween neighborhood, and I learned that I did have some capacity for Halloween in my soul. I thought I was going to be annoyed by the constant trick-or-treaters, but I had a blast for those 8 years we were living in that house in an intense Halloween neighborhood. I was more about celebrating others and candy. But if I look at how I've really approached Halloween in my life, I'm going to go with the never answer for the purposes of the quiz, because it's probably going to give a more accurate answer.
I dig it. I appreciate that you were flirting with the always time to celebrate, but acknowledging that that's not true to yourself. I dig it. All right. Question number 2. What is the best Halloween-themed movie? Is it The Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloween Town, a Disney Channel classic, Hocus Pocus, Twitches, The Addams Family, or The Gilmore Girls? It's a show, but still very fall. Randy, we'll go to you first.
I was all locked in with The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then you gave me the Gilmore Girls option.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna go with Rory and Lorelai, man.
Yeah,
I could quip with those two ladies all day, all night, have a great time.
I'm so glad it was there for you, man. I really, really am. John, what about you, brother? What do you got?
Well, I can't say that I've seen some of these. I mean, Gilmore Girls does sound right up my alley, but I'm I'm going to, you know, and Nightmare Before Christmas is like so iconic. A lot of Tim Burton stuff is. But I would probably have to say, based on my childhood growing up, that Hocus Pocus feels a lot like Halloween. It just has that like New England type of vibe to it, that feel good kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But maybe I'll give Gilmore Girls a watch this year, you know?
Great viewing. Great viewing. You can't go wrong. But I'm with you there in Hocus Pocus. All right. Question 3. Which Halloween episodes of a show would you watch? Friends, Modern Family, Gravity Falls. Halloween episodes usually aren't that good. We'll go back to John for the first answer here.
Oh boy. I haven't really seen much of these. I was hoping like the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors were going to be on there, especially since it ties in. It should be
on here.
I would probably, I guess it would just be Friends. I haven't really I know a little bit about Gravity Falls from like my nephew, but not much else. So I would stick with what I know. Yeah.
Friends is never the wrong answer. Randy, what about you, bud?
Yeah, we got super into Gravity Falls a couple years ago. That show is freaking amazing. I love it. I love the universe. Kris and I did a whole 4-episode podcast series on the Owl House, which shares some creative talent with Gravity Falls. Now, the premise of Gravity Falls is that it takes place over the course of one summer. Nevertheless, it's such a spooky Halloween show every episode that they did a whole Halloween special called Summerween. They forced a made-up summer Halloween holiday into the premise of the show just so they could have an even more Halloween episode. So Gravity Falls all the way.
That's a great show in my book, and I knew that was going to be your choice when I saw these options. For me, it's Modern Family. Claire Dunphy loves Halloween, and she really does it right. All right, next, I need to know how each of you would decorate your house. Are you going full-on graveyard spooky, zombies crawling from the ground, you're scaring the kids who walk by? Is it a nice, maximalist blend of fall decor like pumpkins and cornucopia with a few scarecrows mixed in? Are we talking a more minimalist statement of a scarecrow, a couple of cauldrons, and a good orange light? Or do you have a bare front porch that doesn't care less? Randy, tell me about your house, bud.
It's a bare front porch.
Yeah,
it's a bare front porch. It is. I will say, my wonderful wife Jen has a slightly better spirit than I do, and she will sometimes go for it with a few decorations. But yeah, we've never been a big exterior decoration home, so I'm not going to try to hide it. It is what it is. It's my fault. I want all the listeners to know that. But yeah, that's where we are.
We can only be who we are, man. That's all we can.
I mean, if you gave me one single jack-o'-lantern, I'd be like, boom.
Not today. But John, tell me about your ideal house. Do you have that full-on scary graveyard out front, or something more minimalist?
Well, if I'm going back to my childhood, and Randy, you may know this, in Acushnet, there was this guy. Do you remember the guy who used to decorate his like whole property, like super gory? And my parents would be like, "All right, Johnny, let's go. We're gonna go." And
like he would have Freddy and/or Jason every year, right? Like a lifelike human-size Freddy and/or Jason. Yeah.
And he would hand out these rings, but the bodies he had mannequins on his front lawn were like in poses and being ripped apart, very, very gory.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was just like exposed to it. I was just like, Dad, like, am I supposed to be here? And so thinking now as an adult, I'm gonna have to sort of side with Randy. And I'd probably be more of like a minimalist, like bare porch, just like maybe inside the house, like have some jack-o'-lanterns that I've carved and some like tasteful things. Nothing too crazy. I'd probably reserve like lights and stuff for like Christmas and whatnot,
Sure.
Yeah.
a kid-friendly setup. Everybody's safe walking by your house.
That's right.
Very
Yeah.
considerate of the neighborhood children.
Yeah, man. Me as one of 18 cousins on one side of the family, we would all pile into my Mime and Pepe's house on Halloween Eve, and they lived in a Acushnet not far from that house. So I drove by that and was fascinated by that home every Halloween, multiple times. Great call out.
Yeah.
Especially where your like TV and movie viewing was so restrictive. I'm sure that felt like a rated R household.
Yeah. I want to say that I actually have a copy of it on VHS. And for those that are listening that don't know what VHS is, I'm feeling so terrible about myself. But I think I still have it, just a pan of it. I'll have to like see if I can dig it up something, one day. But
if you find that video and record it with your phone, I will put it on socials. That sounds great.
All right.
Oh yeah,
All right,
1,000,000%.
I'll take a look.
All right, we're moving on with this quiz. It's time to talk about Halloween monsters. John, tell me, what is your favorite monster of the Halloween season? Is it the ghost, the zombie, the vampire, the werewolf, the wicked witch, or the mummy?
Oh boy. I'm probably going to go. I mean, we think vampire, we think of Dracula, and I think of Dracula, I think of like, the Bram Stoker's like love stories at like the core of it. And, that he's more of like an understandable kind of villain at that time. So because of my ties with that, I would choose the vampire, definitely, eternal, live forever,
Yeah, vampires are for literary sad boys. I'm here for vampires. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Randy, what about you, brother?
Lots of good options on that list, but yeah, the versatility in vampire stories, all the different places I can bring you. It's the vampire if I got to pick one.
Yeah,
so many things.
I totally agree. You get to play a lot with timelines with vampires. An eternal character really opens up the creativity. I dig it, gentlemen.
Yeah, the Toadies, Possum Kingdom. Come on.
I love you.
All about a vampire, man.
Randy, we're going to stay with you. You've already mentioned that if you have a pumpkin at all, it's just one. But how do you carve your pumpkin? Classic, terrifying, jagged, scary mouth? Cute? Kitty face? Funny, scared ghost? Or just a plain pumpkin on the front steps? Uncarved.
So I'm a reserved guy, and I need a push. However, I do have a lot of wonderful people in my life who will sometimes give me that push. Shout out to my youngest sister. She is so good at encouraging all of us to do group activities. She'll put together these elaborate cookie decorating situations for the kids. She will often encourage us to carve jack-o'-lanterns. And I'm never going to be the one to initiate it. But once I get there, and that newspaper's out on the table, and I've decided to get my hands dirty, I do have a good time. I do go with a pretty classic mouth, but I really take great time and care to carve things out, smooth them out. As you explore the intricacies of the pumpkin, like I might find some little interesting feature, maybe one eye is partially closed. And lo and behold, all of a sudden I'm Mr. Halloween. So yeah, a pretty classic, standard, not horrifying, but slightly spooky Halloween jack-o'-lantern.
Amazing. I love the description. I fully understand your pumpkin. Randy, you're not seeing the images. Dude, you described exactly one of the pumpkins in one of these pictures. It literally has like a half-closed eye. It's like, It's like, it's couldn't be more spot on. Back into the pod. John, what about you, brother? What does your pumpkin look like?
All right, I'm going to. I have tried every year. I do enjoy it. I like getting into the spirit and carving. And a few years ago, I tried to get a bit ambitious. And you're carving this like intricate design, and like it's caving in, and you're using like toothpicks to hold the thing together. And then it's like rotten within like a day or two. And then it's just like, I'm like, why do I do that to myself? So since then, I've just been doing just like a classic, just like Randy said, a nice classic face, something that, the neighborhood, doesn't get offended by, you know what I mean? So yeah, I would stick with the classic, nice pumpkin jack-o'-lantern.
Classic, happy jack-o'-lantern. It is a real trick of the pumpkin carving, because I too like an intricately carved pumpkin. I've done like cats on fences, picket fences. The thinner you carve, the more quickly it rots. You get these nice detailed sections, and they just turn to mush so fast.
Yeah, when we had that great Halloween neighborhood, my brother-in-law would sometimes come over with his kids, and he would always carve something really intricate. Like he did this amazing pirate ship one year. So yeah, he got to make it look like we were doing a better job with Halloween. Like that would spruce up our deck as the, well over 100 trick-or-treaters would make their way through the neighborhood.
You need to at least participate when you're in a neighborhood like that. Do something to show you're with it.
We did do the full bags of many pieces of candy. Thanks again to my wife. So we were a good house.
Do you ever feel like if you're in a neighborhood like that, because I'll go down to like Marymount or nice neighborhoods around me, and then you get that one house that just refuses to decorate or put up anything. Like, do you think that attracts a lot of negative attention? Do you feel like pressure? Oh, I better put something out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy from Big Daddy, right? Have him come in your house, not taking your CDs because you didn't bring any candy.
Give me that Rolex watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Be prepared next year.
Yeah, next year, be prepared. All right. Well, speaking of movies, it's time to talk true horror. Randy, we're going to go back to you for this one. Which horror movie would you watch? Halloween? A Nightmare on Elm Street? Friday the 13th? Or just whatever's on TV?
I'm not a big slasher movie guy. I was really waiting for like a cerebral, like The Shining to pop up for me or something like that on the list.
No, it's the big three. It's Michael, it's Freddy, it's Jason.
I'm going to say whatever's on TV because I might stumble into a Hocus Pocus. Maybe even someone's doing something cool. Like I love the original Alien movie is like one of my favorite horror movies. So yeah, I think I'll find something that does it for me more.
Maybe you get The Great Pumpkin. Some great television viewing this time of year.
Yeah.
John, what about you? Do you like any of those big three horror guys or?
I do, but for like, I would probably, oh geez, it's tough. It's tough. I would say, Freddy, under the stipulation that it would be like Dream Warriors. I don't know if either of you have ever seen that one.
Wow.
And that always that because it was something different. Like slasher movies have been done so many times, and that one was like, well, wait a second, like the concept of being in your dreams, like so the humans can do anything. And like that always like, kind of blew me away. So if that one was on, I would watch that. And that is my answer. But I'd probably end up doing what Randy would do and just be like, whatever's on TV is fine. But Freddy's my answer. Freddy.
I dig it.
That's
Freddy
a great answer.
Terrified me as a kid. That of the three, the idea that he could just get you in your dreams is no fun. No, thank you. All right, we'll stick with you, John. Tell me, which Halloween item is your favorite? Do you like pumpkins, spider webs, fallen leaves, or candy?
Oh boy. I would say fallen leaves. That's the color of like the leaves. People like travel all up here. They go up north to go see the leaves, and it adds so much. I think about like, if I ever move down south or west coast or something, and you don't have those leaves, would it ever feel like fall? So yeah, fallen leaves without a doubt.
Totally agree. That was also my answer. I was a kid working at Bickford's Family Restaurant. Shout out to any of the New England podlings. When one evening a whole bus full of like old folks pulled in, and it was explained to me that they were all like on a foliage tour. That was the first time I was 15 years old, and I encountered the idea that these people had traveled all the way from Florida just to drive through New England at this time of year and observe the foliage.
Crazy.
They're on a big old tour bus. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, what about you? Do you also love our New England crunchy leaves, or are you sticking with spider webs, pumpkins?
Listen, I do love the fall foliage, but I do have a soft spot when it comes to Halloween decorating. for the cobwebs. You know, the front porch is pretty bare, but you know, my oldest son, he loves Halloween, and his fake cobweb game is strong. We always get a
Nice.
very spooky fireplace every year. He's got like a little mini blow up, like Jack Skellington, like an indoor version. And also, you know, the Christmas tree, the little ceramic-y Christmas tree with the multicolored lights that everyone's mom had.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have that, but it's like a Halloween tree instead. And that's
I've
also
never seen
Ben's.
that.
Yeah, it's right there with the cobwebs. I'll send you a photo when we set it up. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the cobwebs. It's a classic.
It adds so much ambiance. A couple of cobwebs
Mhm.
really makes the room feel spooky.
Yeah.
All right. Folks, we're down to our final question. Are you both feeling pretty good? You ready to find out what kind of a Halloween
Yeah.
person you are?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Well, last thing, Randy, tell me, what are you most likely to be doing on Halloween night? Are you partying, trick-or-treating, watching a horror movie, working, hanging with friends, or just sleeping the night away?
Definitely trick or treating, man.
Yep.
My guys love trick or treating, and I love trick or treating with them even more than I ever loved trick or treating as a kid. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good dad. Love that. John?
No, what is it as a dad though? Like, do you feel like why do you feel like you enjoy it more? Just seeing it bring them so much joy and watch them get so excited?
That's exactly it. And like, I don't know, like this whole, like the special, like rules are lifted. They're out after dark. Especially when we were like in the heart of that great trick or treat neighborhood. I don't know, just the whole vibe. I don't know. I got like the whole kids on bikes vibe, and watching them grow up, all that fun stuff just works.
I think at the holidays, and maybe, Christmas is a good example, Halloween too, it's a good opportunity to really observe the universality of childhood. There's certain tropes and experiences of Halloween night that you get to watch your kid going through and know that it's so similar to what you experienced. Whether it's like wondering which house has the king-size candy bars and then spreading that word amongst other trick-or-treaters as you walk along, like, make sure you hit that house over there. Watching all that play out again, generation after generation, is a real blast.
Yeah. What was that book, Randy, that you were talking about? Something Wicked This Way Comes? Where
That's the one.
the dad envision, he sees the kids going. I remember this moment where the dad's watching the kids go on this adventure or figure it out, and he envisions himself, I think, running with them and like instilling his like that youth or being a kid again, getting on bikes, going on that adventure kind of thing. I'm reminded of that as you're talking about taking your kids out.
One of my all-time favorite books, right? You've got this dad who's got to reconnect with his youthfulness and that childlike wonder to connect with the kids, and these kids who want to grow up too quickly. And they both have to learn a little lesson there. But yeah, you'll not be shocked to know that book is already in my notes for later tonight.
Oh.
Nice. Well, John, it's just down to you, man. Are you partying? You trick-or-treating? You watching a horror movie? Hanging out with friends? Or sleeping the night away? Or I suppose you could be working too.
Yeah. I think it's like the social aspect of it I'd be doing, like definitely like hanging out with friends and partying. But I would just say like being like out with friends, dressing up, having a good time, having like a drink, whatever. I think that's kind of like what it is. I feel like I would like rob myself if I was just sat home and did nothing. But keeping in mind, I don't have kids or anything like that, so there's no real excuse for me to be wandering the neighborhood, So just hanging out with friends.
Absolutely perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the results are in, and I am really pleased to inform you, John, you, sir, are spooky Halloween. You love all things scary and horror related. You see every horror movie you can and love getting scared. You've had a vampire phase growing up, and now you've dyed your hair black at least once. During Halloween, you're binge-watching the Conjuring movies while kids get scared at your killer porch decor. My goodness, this quiz didn't understand you at all. Wow. I will say the image you got, though, is of Beetlejuice and Lydia Dietz in her red
Nice.
gown, the wedding scene.
All right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
strong image. Randy, you, sir, no surprise here. I'm looking at an image of Rory and Lorelei sitting together on some hay bales with some pumpkins in the
Nice.
background. You are autumn Halloween. You wait the entire year for September to come by so you can be fall obsessed without sounding too crazy. Your outfits are superb during the season with cozy sweaters and Converses. You are almost always seen with some sort of hot drink in your hand, but you always have earbuds or headphones with you, and you're often reading a book. Your music taste is the best. And you're the most aesthetic person out of your friends.
Yeah.
I think this one more closely captured you, still not altogether accurate.
I mean, if you take the fashion sense out of it, it's me all over. That's the one piece that's missing.
Yeah. I can see, no comment. I only ever see you from like the collarbone up, so I'm really not sure, to be honest. I've only hung with you in person
it's
the one
usually
time.
it's usually a dad novelty tee that's also going to be pajamas. So
Sweet.
How accurate was it about you, Kris, when you took the quiz earlier?
I also got autumn Halloween, and I'm probably somewhere more accurately between you guys. Not all the way spooky, because I do not want to watch a Freddy Krueger movie, nor Michael Myers, nor Jason. I would rather watch Halloween Town, followed by Hocus Pocus, followed by perhaps a Halloween Town sequel. And so, yeah, I definitely love Halloween. I start decorating in September. We do multiple jack-o'-lanterns out front. We decorate a little bit of the yard, but a ton of the inside of the house. We've already phase 1 spookified at my house. There will be a phase 2 as we get into the month of October. So this is like semi-accurate. What I can see is evident in the quiz is that like one question determined your ultimate results, right? I think because you picked Freddy Krueger,
Freddy Krueger. I'm just like goth guy, you know?
Yeah, vampires and Krueger, and they think they know everything about you.
Yeah.
there's some little slider there. Just
Fantastic. Well, that was a ton of fun. Thank you both for letting me put you through the ringer that way. I think that what we determined most importantly is that BuzzFeed really doesn't know what it's talking about. and personality quizzes are bullshit. But I love Halloween, and it was fun to talk about some iconic stuff.
Thank you so much for that, Kris. I had a blast. Now, if you are here still listening to us and you are a podling, you know that we're not interested in tightening things up. We're not in a rush to get to the content, especially when we have a new friend to get to know and bond with. Because when Media Lit works, that's why it works, right? We really care about our guests. We really care about building this relationship so we can dig into the story. Kris and I might not know how to tighten things up, but fortunately for us, Edgar Allan Poe knows a thing or two about word economy. So I think we can jump into this and know that we've got a nice tight piece of storytelling to work on tonight. We are here tonight to talk specifically about Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart from 1843. You probably read it in middle school or high school at some point, if you haven't read it since for fun. And I'm willing to bet that you remember at least one or two details, even if it's been a couple decades since your last read. Nevertheless, here is your synopsis. An unnamed narrator pulls us straight into his persistent state of nervous anxiety and insists that he is not, in fact, mad. He proceeds to explain why he resolved to murder an old man because of the persistent stare from his filmy vulture eye, which is likely a cataract. We never learn the nature of the narrator's relationship with the old man, but the old man seems to hold some sort of authority over the narrator. Nevertheless, the narrator insists that the old man never wronged him. His motive for murder is solely the evil eye. Fixated on this eye, the narrator shares his carefully formulated murder plan. It involves treating the old man with extreme kindness to avoid suspicion, and slowly creeping his head into the old man's bedchamber each night, to shine one splinter of light upon that eye. On the night of the murder, the old man hears an intruder, but both murderer and victim sit in a lengthy, dreadful silence until the narrator finally pounces. He proceeds to dismember the old man, scatter his body parts beneath the floorboards, and carefully replace the boards. There's only one problem. He believes he can hear the persistent heartbeat of the victim. In the morning, police officers arrive very promptly to investigate reports of a scream in the night and suspected foul play. After inviting the officers to explore the house, the narrator sits with them, placing his chair directly above the body. But the sound of the heartbeat quickly overcomes the narrator. In short order, he falls into clear, nervous speech and mannerisms before revealing the location of the body. All right, that is the Telltale Heart. John, anything you'd like to emphasize that didn't make it into the description?
I want to say that synopsis was like just beautiful. There's really nothing I would want to add without. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into like the finer sort of intricacies of it, but I think it's a perfect summary.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you decided to give us even like a quick modern interpretation of that vulture eye. I appreciate the intuition there that it's likely a cataract. Can I ask you a question, though? It's not that I disagree, but what made you choose male pronouns all throughout the synopsis, the assumption there that the narrator's male?
That's such a good question, Kris. I'm glad you asked. I think it is years upon years of patriarchy. I've always assumed the narrator is a man, but we don't really have proof of that, do we?
We don't. There's nothing really specific in the story that says one way or the other. I do think I always had the same assumption too, and there's probably certain like societal, cultural norms that we could point to that suggest, like of that time, of that era, living situations, things like that, that maybe suggest that it's a man, the way the police behave with the narrator.
Yeah, they're kind of broing out, it sounds
especially
like.
when the narrator's describing themselves becoming hysterical. I don't think that back then a couple of bro cops would have sat back and been chill with a woman kind of starting to yell and shriek and get overly animated. So I agree with you that it is only an assumption, but I've had the same assumption.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. Like I immediately think that like it's definitely a male narrator. I mean, I feel like you should be able to separate the art from the artist, but like Poe, I think, injects so much of his life and experiences into all of his writing. So it's just like, I assume it's him every single time. Like, incorrectly, I should not be doing that, but I just assume that, you know?
And I don't think we're doing anything wrong either. You could probably sense I was being a little bit like cheeky with my voice there. I do want to talk about the things that we assume about a text. But the reason I don't think we're doing anything wrong is because I don't think it matters. Like, this is such a universal story. I love that there is room for interpretation. I love that there's room for people to apply sort of their own expectations onto the story. So I'm just going to call that a strength, the universality of this piece of literature.
That's what good writing should do. Thank you so much for a phenomenal synopsis, as always. But now it's time to get into the stuff that I really love about Media Lit. It's time to talk about our personal connections to this story. And I think we all probably have something to mention here tonight for the Telltale Heart. But I'm excited to start with you, John. Can you tell me what it's an early or important memory that you have connected to Poe or this particular story?
Oh, geez. I'd have to... I'm very long-winded when it comes to this. I would go back to like my favorite book of all time is The Count of Monte Cristo, and I've always loved this, like, not necessarily a redemption story, but like a story about a man who's kind of like broken down on his luck and finds a way to sort of come back and get revenge, like a solid revenge tale. And then thinking of that, I started with Cask of Amontillado was my first Poe story.
Yeah.
And very similar. Like, I'm finding a lot of like similarities between this story and that story, where like they're both kind of unhinged and trying to both justify death in some way, like murder in some way. And then it wasn't until like one of my favorite like music groups growing up, he has the eyes of Poe tattooed on his back. And I was like, I wasn't really exposed to too much Poe at this point. So then I just like started like I would pick up a story every once in a while and read it. And then, I met Randy and took a look at that book. And then I started teaching. And then it was we would do a creative unit on the fall of the House of Usher, and they would like kind of continue the story, what happens after.
Nice.
We would read this around Halloween. It was all part of the curriculum. So it's just kind of like a weird lingering interest that started from when I was younger, like obsessed with that concept of revenge.
Very cool. Count of Monte Cristo. Great story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
So I could talk about that for hours. So good.
Very similar. I've loved this particular story. This is the first Poe story that I ever read, The Telltale Heart. And I didn't know what a short story was at the time. I was like 8 or 9 years old. And so I came across The Telltale Heart encompassed in like another collection of poems and stories. And I got to the end right when he confesses and it ended. And I think because the story both like jumps right in the midst of this narrator's hysteria and it ends with the confession, I thought for sure this was an excerpt from some larger tale. I wasn't accustomed to short stories. I was accustomed to novels, right? Even short ones.
Yep.
I was floored when I found out this was all there was. And I liked it even more then. And short stories have since become one of my favorite forms of storytelling. There's so much that can be conveyed when you get into, to your point, Randy, the universality of certain stories. You don't need to build out a whole world. You don't need to give a ton of background and exposition. You can just bring an audience into a specific time and place and a specific life and tell something poignant and true. I love short stories, and it all starts here with this one.
Yeah, I feel like, like you bring up a good point where it's like there's entertainment in explaining less. Like I feel like nowadays with modern media, it's like they're branching out and making everything gets a show and a movie to explain this and explain that. And it's like the mystery and having like your audience, like our brain fill in those gaps and like we can create our own ending. And like, to me, this is what happened next. To you, maybe it was something different. And like, that is a great idea. I never really thought about it like that. Just like the fact that it's short, it's concise and easy, to kind of get through. And then like what happened? And then you're just left with it, thinking about like motivation. Like, I don't know, there's so much to talk about,
Totally.
Yeah, I love what you had to say about just the value of a short story. And this is such a tiny slice of life here. It's just such a small moment. And I think about stories like this all the time. Kris, you and I, John, you and I, we're all big Star Wars fans. There's so much content that I like and dislike. And I'm not saying we need to get rid of it all, but every once in a while, I just think about how pure and perfect that initial story was when it was just the original Star Wars film. You've got enough sort of cultural call-outs to fill in the blanks. You've got this really vague sense of the Force. And there's something so beautiful and perfect about that story. I'm one of the rare Star Wars fans that actually technically prefers the original Star Wars film to Empire Strikes Back, even though I also love that movie. But yeah, there's something about just a simple story that I love. But yeah, as for me, I can't tell you exactly what age I was. I'm almost positive the first story I read was The Telltale Heart. And I think the main impact on me was just like a moment where you grow up, where you lose some innocence, right? Sure, I drove by that house with the Freddy and the Jason on the front lawn as a kid, and I didn't know what to make of it, but it's like 1 second you're in school reading, I don't know, Super Fudge, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. And then one day you're reading The Telltale Heart, and there's a dismembered body beneath the floorboards. But the thing that drove it home for me is the guilt. Or at least what I read into that heartbeat was a sense of guilt. Perhaps it was my Catholic upbringing and deep sense of Catholic guilt. But that gnawing emotion is the thing that sticks with me even more than the violence. So speaking of that, that guilt and some of the other universal things here, I wanted to ask each of you, what sticks with you about this story? For me, it's the guilt. It might be something similar for each of you, but why does the story continue to take up space in your head? Kris, I'll go to you first on this one.
I do think it is that deep sense of guilt that I resonated with the first time I read it that felt so true to me. The idea that we as humans don't necessarily need something outside of ourselves to tell us what is right and what is wrong. We have plenty of that, certainly, but there's something deep inside of us that intrinsically knows certain things are wrong. And I think coldly taking another life is one of them. And so, I mean, at the time, I think I told you I was 8 or 9, right? It was really easy for me to imagine sitting across from an authority figure, probably my parents at the time, and just sitting there wrestling with guilt. Guilt almost for the fact that I was going to get away with the wrong thing as much as for having done the wrong thing itself. I think as a kid, there's even some sense that the world should be more just than that you shouldn't be able to get away with something like cold murder. I'd grow up to learn that unfortunately the world isn't so cut and dry. But I think at the time, the idea of that guilt really eating at a person felt very real to me. And since then, I've read so much more Poe, and I think the reason his works in general have stuck with me is, I don't know, maybe for the same reason that I love Inside Out. I love the way Inside Out makes us reckon with the idea that sadness is a really important part of experiencing life to the fullest. Like, I love that the mother is portrayed as having sadness steering the ship. She's in charge for the mother. Poe is very sad, but he's often romantically sad as much as he is gothically sad, and that nature of his works has always spoken to something sort of slightly darker inside of me. I was a really happy kid with a mopey, brooding streak that has stuck with me. I've got the Batman tattoo to prove it. So yeah, I think there's something in that deep gothic sadness of Poe that really works for me. There's a statue in Boston of him striding down the sidewalk with a raven behind him and his coat fluttering out. Man, I love that statue, and I'll stop and just like peer at it and wonder what that man was really like. those sad eyes.
John, how does this story live on in your head?
This specific story is as I taught it over time, like a lot of the times, like when you're a teacher, you realize that the students sometimes teach you things. And I'm like, I've read this story like 100 and something times. And there was one time where like with this particular murder and this particular story, he just escalates. Like he's just like, hey, I respect this old man. What's up with his eye? I'm going to kill him. And then it's just like, whoa. And then everything goes pretty good. And he's very like, methodical about it. And what I really started thinking about was, is this his first murder? Has this man done this before? Like to the point where like thinking about the neighbors, the other morning I got up and I'm going to my car. I get up at 4:45, like super early to go to the gym. And I heard this blood curdling scream from a few streets down. And I was like, what? And then that was it. I got my car. Okay, gonna go get my coffee and go to work. And I'm just like thinking about Telltale Heart, because the neighbors hear a similar sound and they go right to the cops. They don't come to like investigate. And this is back, in 1842, 43, whatever it was. And they escalate right to this. I just like, I wonder if like that, this like haunts me thinking that he has done this before. This is not the first time. And the neighbors go right to and like escalating to notifying the cops. And then, but the fact that it's a short story, going back to what Kris said, it's just like, we're not going to know. And this, like, that's what my mind is just overthinking and working on that. And just, it definitely villainizes the narrator even more so,
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. I love the idea that they've like, okay, no more screams. That's one scream too many. We gotta call the cops. I love that.
But I should probably check on my neighbors too. You know what I mean? Like that was a little scary at like 5 a.m. So
All right, guys, before we move on, are there any other ways that this story has influenced your life? Maybe particular relationships or some other corners of your life that we haven't covered just yet?
I would say, surprisingly, with an author that writes so much about this like gothic doom and gloom, he juxtaposes a lot of death and sadness with a lot of beauty at times, and like in nature, and just overall, like I'm thinking back to like Annabelle Lee or and not particularly with like Telltale, but it's impacted me to like kind of like appreciate a lot of things and find the beauty. There was he has a quote in his like philosophy of composition discussing like beauty itself and how it like invigorates the soul, and it's not just in like female or in a partner, it's more in like life. And I feel like
Yeah.
my girlfriend would probably give me the side eye if she heard me right now, but I try to just appreciate a lot of things. Like we'll be out in nature, or, like on a hike or something. I'll just be like, just like take a look at this, and like take a look at this, like this breeze and the ocean. And oftentimes, like I do think about like Poe in this moment where it's just like enjoying the nature and enjoying the beauty. As like weird and English teachery that sounds, but I feel like it's had a pretty big influence on just like my current state.
Yeah, I love that, John. It's like my guy Vonnegut. When things are going sweetly and peacefully, please pause a moment and then say out loud, if this isn't nice, what is?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I just really relate to that, right? There's a certain beauty even in the sadness. And so this was how I learned to write poetry. I hadn't yet put pen to paper until I read Poe, and then all of a sudden it unlocked something inside of me. And I think that one of the first poems I wrote that got me any kind of attention in my life was just called Rainy Day, and it was very much that. It was a poem that made you feel the doom and gloom of the impending storm. So Poe reminds me of two people in my family. Reminds me of my dad in a lot of ways, because he really encouraged that writing, even though like he's a football coach, big. I think most young men in my life, my friends or people who played for him, would say he's one of the scariest guys you can know. But he loves his boys, and he always made me feel really special for the fact that I like to write poetry. And he always sort of encouraged that and celebrated that. Even now, he'll bust out a framed version of that Rainy Day poem to like brag about it. And it's very childish, right? It was written by a 10-year-old. But he really honors that. And there's my Auntie Trace, because shout out Auntie Trace. I have here the tome from which I read Telltale Heart in prep for the pod, and you can see it's all yellowed because I've had it since I was 10. She bought it for me for my birthday shortly after I read the Telltale Heart. I think I was 9. We were living in their house, sleeping on their porch for a little while, and it was probably that July for my 10th birthday that she got me this book. And it's just 67 tales, The Raven and other poems included. So yeah, bunch of short stories and poems, and changed my young life. So shout out to Auntie Trace.
All right, folks. We've had a chance to get to know what Poe means to us on a personal level, what we mean to each other. We're all friends now, and we are very much primed to dig a little bit deeper into the next layer of the Telltale Heart. Now, this story is wildly persistent in popular culture. It's really in the upper echelon of works from Poe. In a broad sense, why do you think this story has endured for nearly 200 years? What are the universal themes and ideas that stick with us? We've spoken to this on a personal level, but we may have a little bit to add here. Kris, what do you think?
I mean, we talked about the guilt piece, but I think also there's the idea of that wrong thing we all imagine ourselves capable of doing, right? That facet of yourself that you keep locked away. And we keep it locked away for fear that, I think we fear that part of ourselves in a real way. And I think we fear the judgment of that thing from other people. That's all very real. And this takes that and jacks it up to 11, makes it really like literal with this murder and this guilt. But I think all of us have this sense of, a line we wouldn't cross, but what if we did? And there's something salacious and enticing about that. And anytime you can live vicariously through a story. It excites something inside of you, right? And I think that that's very real with this story.
Love that. John, any more thoughts on why this story has just endured for almost 200 years now?
I just, thinking like biographically to him, aside from the fact of like marrying his cousin, like he was in love with someone, married them, and she was like 14, 13, 14 at the time, and then died like 10 years later. And I think he spiraled at that point. I think that sort of sent him into this idea of on top of alcoholism and depression, and any other substances. I think just dealing with the death and then sort of like the madness surrounding it, right? I just see it in a lot of his stories, dealing with these sort of unreliable narrators that are like don't necessarily care what they do, or will try to justify it, even though it's like kind of ridiculous at the time. And just like love, loss, death, the loss of like a beautiful woman, we see those reoccurring in his story. So when he has a character in like Telltale, just pretty unhinged, you know what I mean? I just can't help but think of just like thinking about him and his life and his thoughts, and I think that can apply to a lot of other authors at the time. I mean, H.P. Lovecraft, similar stuff over here in Providence. But I think that just usually stays with everybody because a lot of people can relate. Like everybody loses someone, and everybody can relate to that feeling, that grief. But everybody can also relate being in love with someone and dealing with that love. And he's just like tap dancing on like these polar opposites all the time, and can connect with almost anyone.
Love that.
Yeah, I think you guys both nailed it. I had really similar things to say. This question of, is man inherently good? Is there some inner darkness that we can't fully control? Is a question that comes to the surface. And, I can't go more than a few minutes without quoting Vonnegut, but, I think back to something he says in, I forget if it's Breakfast of Champions. I think it's Breakfast of Champions. And he's talking about how after studying just a little bit of science, he like really saw human beings as just almost like a bunch of wires. Like we're not that far from robots in the sense that, just one tiny little chemical imbalance could just wildly throw something out of whack in your body. Like we're so susceptible to influence. And that wasn't like his full theory of humanity or anything like that. But that notion that like there are ways we are so vulnerable.
Yeah. No, I see that.
Yeah. I think, too, before we move on, I want to also highlight, we were talking about sort of the truths that Poe was able to capture in his storytelling. It's also really insane how seemingly accurately he describes schizophrenia in his narrator, right? Like the name for that disorder doesn't come about until the 20th century, early 20th century. And I don't know what kind of an understanding was had at the time, but it's clear he has an intimate relationship. He has experienced this type of sickness in his life. Perhaps not in himself, but he's witnessed these things, or he's read the journals of the doctors who have encountered these things and have worked on diagnosing these things. I think the earliest understanding of schizophrenia was, it likened it to dementia, and it was like understood as an early onset of dementia.
Yeah.
And was held kind of as like one of two potential types of psychosis. You could be like manic depressed, now known as bipolar, or you could be like demented. You could have dementia.
Yeah.
And so it just amazes me how close he was to really understanding what hundreds of years later we're still coming to appreciate and fully understand the complexities of. And there's got to be something in that has helped this story last and has captured imaginations for so long.
Yeah. What's interesting is that the story starts out, and I think this is important to note, it starts out with him talking about his senses and how his senses are heightened only because of, and I'm paraphrasing here, this disease. He's like, the disease has sharpened my senses. That's the only mention of him sort of accepting that there is something wrong with him.
Yeah.
Moving forward, he's like, oh, if I'm so insane, then why would I be doing this? Why would I be doing that? But he does accept and acknowledge in the beginning he's been diagnosed with something or has something.
Yeah, there's something going on. He doesn't think he's crazy because of it, but there is something happening.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think we've probably nailed down some of the staying power of this story, but I'm excited to talk pop culture too, because this has had its influences. It's probably impossible to talk about the story without talking about some of those far-ranging influences. So, like, Randy, when you talk about Telltale Heart, what kinds of other pieces of media or literature come to mind?
Sure. I've got a couple in mind. For my first one in this little mini roundtable, I'm gonna keep it in the 1800s, but a few decades later. And I'm gonna go to my other favorite short story that captures some sort of like mental disassociation and gives me the creepy vibes, and that's going to be The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Is one of many stories that I don't know if it would exist without the Telltale Heart. I think it's just a safe assumption to make. I've never read, an essay where Charlotte Perkins Gilman specifically cites it as an influence, but there's no way it isn't. It's like my other story I think of when you have these very creative ways to bring us viscerally into what a narrator is feeling, putting us physically in that room that she feels so trapped in, describing that there is this marking on the wall that looks like someone's rubbed up against it. And it takes a few more journal entries for us to realize that's her crawling around the room at night. And I just love these slow revelations. And so that's my first shout out.
Love that, you English teacher, you. What about you, John?
Oh boy. Well, I'm also going to stay in the Victorian era, but I'll probably go about 10 years or so beforehand. In like around the 1832 with our good friend Charles Dickens. And similar to what I've been discussing today, I just found it like a Christmas Carol, that story. I don't remember the quote in the beginning, but it's something like made this story like haunt you in like the nicest way possible. And it's like, and it's a Christmas story that also has a ton of like death and sadness and grief, and it has all these darker moments, but it does have these. And again, I get Dickens, right? He wants to kind of warm things up that ends up all positive and stuff. But I can't help but draw like these parallels between that notion of like beauty and love and loss, and like at times it can be a scary story. Like if you go and watch any of the Disney ones or Muppet Christmas Carol, there are like dark moments. These guys are dead and like haunting him and scaring him, and I don't know, like I just draw parallels at that time. Like you're seeing these forms of media come out that just have a lot of this darkness and like death to them, but also like this beauty to them. You know what I mean? I think Poe and Dickens at times are like experts at it.
Yeah, man. The most scared I ever was as a kid was my dad brought me to see A Christmas Carol at Trinity Repertory Theater in Providence. And I want to say I was in like first grade, and you got to the Marley scene, and I think they were like maybe projecting the actor's face like on the wall or something like that. It was really big. It was loud. I kind of remember like the smell, because they had that sort of like stage smoke going. And I was really like genuinely terrified. And as much as I love Muppet Christmas Carol, when I was a kid, I was a little spooked when Marley and Marley popped up, even though there were these two characters, Statler and Waldorf, that I loved. Yep. So great call out.
I was going to throw a Muppet quote in there just for you, but you beat me to it.
Really brilliant. I love that you both were able to key into some of the spiritualism of that century, right? And I'm sure that was an influence on the authors you're talking about. I'm going to bring it way modern. When I think about Poe, when I think about reading nervous, mentally ill characters, I think of Chuck Palahniuk. I don't know if you guys read much Chuck, but I think of Lullaby, and I think of course, Fight Club. But I mean, when you talk about an author who really knows how to get into the darkness and the grit of the human condition, he feels like he's carrying a torch for Poe into the modern age.
Of course.
Yeah.
I just read, my girlfriend actually recommended Invisible Monsters. Have you read that?
Yeah.
So very similar. Like, I'm like, okay, what's the trick going to be? What's the twist going to be? Because it's the same. If you've read Fight Club, if you've read any of his like Lullaby, you question the narrators, you question what they're telling you, and then there's that moment of and it's the same thing. So it's so funny you bring up Pollock. Yeah,
love that.
It's great. Yeah.
Randy, anything else for you?
Yeah, I think just our whole cultural fascination with serial killers, with true crime, with getting into the minds of serial killers, I think you can track a lot of it back to this time period, this moment, this story. We could go on and on and on just on that one angle, but my main takeaway is both at the beginning of this story and the end, the narrator is just insisting that he is fine. He's just fine. Everything's fine. I'm not even sure I believe him that the officers are quite as chill as he thinks they are in this story. But all I can think of is the very end of Psycho. We've receded completely into the mother character. We get inside the killer's head and we hear the voice of the mother, I bet they're watching me. And I'm going to show them how calm I am and how calm, cool, and collected I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. And they'll look at me and say, she wouldn't even hurt a fly. Like that whole vibe has just endured. And we can bring that closer and closer to the present.
I've never appreciated how much that reminds me of a drunk person doing their best to be sober, and you think you're talking just fine, and no one can tell that you're talking funny. That's what that reminds me of.
So good.
John, any media or literature that comes to mind for Poe in this story?
So this is so random. I saw, this is like years ago, and I'm not a country music guy. Do any of you listen to country music? No,
sir.
There was a music video of this guy, whatever his name is Toby Keith, and the music video is simply the Cask of Amontillado. He's bringing his girlfriend, he's breaking up with her, brings her downstairs in the basement, and he's building this wall. And for whatever it was either on VH1 or something like that as a kid. I'm like, that's Poe. There are these references. And it's like, and I really should pay attention and like jot these down, because like they are actually far more prevalent than I can like remember, outside of like The Simpsons, because they'll all, like every Treehouse of Horror, they'll always do something based around like Poe. I don't know, but they pop up more than I would, care to remember, really.
Yeah.
That's really well said. I can't believe Toby Keith is that smart. Forgive my ignorance in saying so. But I was gonna go there next to Treehouse of Horror and to The Simpsons in general. I mean, The Simpsons is such a smart show, so it's no surprise. But in the 8th episode ever of The Simpsons, they did the Telltale Head, and they did a whole story that was homaging this story. I think as recently I saw as just a couple of years ago, I remember it was the Telltale Bart. You actually had like Vincent Price telling the story to Maggie. She strangles him out with the cord. And so yeah, I think if you're doing good, thoughtful, referential television making or filmmaking today, I don't know, there's no way to get away without at least somewhat dancing around the vicinity of Poe in these kinds of stories. Randy, anything else to bring us home?
I've just got one more. This is more of a thematic tie-in, and it's the movie that scared me more than any other movie in my life, I think, on an existential level. And this is the film Crimes and Misdemeanors from 1989. I don't go out of my way to shout out Woody Allen movies these days, but the reason I want to bring this one up is because it evoked Poe and then terrified me. In this film, Martin Landau is a successful businessman. He's been carrying on an extramarital affair, and he's trying to break it off. It's not worked. Angelica Houston plays his mistress. He invites his brother over, who they kind of imply is tied in with organized crime or has some friends who aren't that great. And we realize he's invited his brother over there to ask him to have this woman killed, but he won't say it. He won't say it. He makes his brother basically say it for him. So he makes the call. It happens. And, Martin Landau's character is racked with guilt. He's having dreams, visions. I'm like, Poe, that's what you get. But what makes this movie terrifying to me is we do a flash forward. It's one of those films with a few lightly overlapping plots, like there are 3 or 4 stories, and there's like one connecting character. And all of a sudden we jump ahead a few months to some gala, and all the characters are there. And Martin Landau's character, he's fine. He kind of got over it. Time passed and the guilt's not that bad anymore. And it terrified me because it felt like it was breaking that universal rule. And it was also terrifying to know that, like you mentioned earlier, Kris, the way the world really works, there are people who do horrible things and reconcile it with themselves, and just scary stuff. So that was my last one for the roundtable.
Particularly cynical and dark and appropriate for the topic at hand. So thank you.
All right. Do either of you guys have any other connections you want to shout out?
No, I think we did it.
All right. All right, folks. So we've gone deep on theme. We've made literary connections. We've dug into this, but we haven't really gotten into the language. So this is the point in the pod where I'm going to ask each of my fellow podcasters here to share some of their favorite quotes or moments or images from the story. We're going to get into that language. So John, my fellow English teacher, I've got to go to you first. What's your favorite quote from this story?
Well, I kind of spoiled it already, because I did want to talk about that disease, So Kris, kind of talked about it a little bit, like what exactly is this disease? He started off by saying this sharpened my senses, but it's also recognizing it as like a disease, And like I said, like that kind of haunted me a little bit. The fact that the neighbors too also kind of stuck with me. And also like just like back in this time, like what was the response time of police? You know what I mean? Like just in the idea of like how long did it normally take? Like they're not picking up a cell phone. So I don't know why it is I'm fixated on the aspect of it not being his first murder. But the idea of like the neighbors, they also went right to attend. They contacted the police. Like, did he know that they were going to come? And like that aspect of it, like, it's kind of like just like stuck with me,
Mm-hmm.
That imagery. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Kris, do you have a favorite quote or image or moment?
Well, it was going to be the first paragraph of the story. But luckily I had a backup since John went there first. But let me just say, I relate. As a kid, these images were so powerful and attention grabbing. They made me curious. So for me, I'll go to the second paragraph then. And it's all about how he conceived the idea of his murder, why he needs to do it. As a kid, this really messed with me. I'm just going to read it in case the audience isn't familiar, because he's as crazy as he claims not to be. It's impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. He doesn't want to kill the man. He's so paranoid. He's so far gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's the eye that haunts him, almost as if the eye has a will of its own separate from the man. And we'll see more of that later when he can't commit the act when the eye is closed, because he loves the old man. Perhaps in the sense that you love all of your neighbors.
Right.
But
Right.
it's the eye that vexes him. And when I read that as a kid, I was like, all the other things that he says he's not feeling, that's how you understand murders to happen, crimes of passion. Somebody has wronged you. You know, you go for retribution of some kind. I think this is the first time I ever read the words of just a cold-blooded killer, a person who could do this for no wrong at all. There's just something I don't like about you. That scared me.
And he talks about him in a positive light. Like he's like, I love the old man. Like, you know, and it goes back. It was also in the first or second paragraph where he's like talking about his hearing. He's like, I heard things from heaven, I heard things from the earth, and I heard many things from hell. And maybe that's him sort of wrestling with these, like heaven. Oh, he's good. And then earth is like more logical thinking. And then hell is like, but that eye of his, that thing's gotta go, you know?
Yeah.
He's hung up on his own illness, and I always feel like there's something about this eye that's maybe unhealthy. I said earlier, probably a cataract or something like that. Is seeing some sort of physical ailment embodied looking back at him? Is that part of what's haunting him so badly? Like he's so torn up inside, this makes him look inward, and he doesn't like what he sees or something like that. So I love an eye image, and that's where I always go with that one. Great quote, Kris.
Excellent.
There are obviously so many great options here, but I'm going to go with this moment where, you know, despite all these nights of successfully sneaking in the room, pointing that ray of lamplight directly upon the eye, the night of the deed, it doesn't go so well. The man jumps up in bed. They're sitting there in the total darkness. And we get a few minutes, a little bit while later, after he's sitting there in the dark for an hour, not moving. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it had welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I don't think I've experienced this exact groan, but I felt it. The desperation. This man knows someone's in the room. He knows he's in danger. He's trying to talk himself out of it. You want him to just move, but they just sit there. If he moves, the murderer is going to move. The longer he sits there, maybe the longer he can delay it. And there's just this sense of knowing it's over. And that hits me so hard. Now, I told you I was going to hit you with something wicked this way comes. I love the choice to set this at midnight. But I do think something wicked this way comes makes an argument that midnight would not have been the best time. Because something wicked this way comes makes the argument that midnight is not the worst time of night where you would feel mortal terror. No, it should be 3 a.m. So I just want to regale you with one of my favorite literary quotes of all time, describing why 3 a.m. should actually be the most horrifying moment.
Lay it on us.
So we've got...
It must be lonely.
Whew. All right, here we go. Oh God, midnight's not bad. You wake and go back to sleep. 1 or 2's not bad. You toss, but sleep again. 5 or 6 in the morning, there's hope for dawn just under the horizon. But 3? Now Christ, 3 a.m.? Doctors say the body's at low tide then. The soul is out. The blood moves slow. You're the nearest to dead you'll ever be, save dying. Sleep is a patch of death. But 3 a.m, full wide-eyed staring, is living death. You dream with your eyes open. God, if you had the strength to rouse up, you'd slaughter your half-dreams with buckshot. But no, you lie pinned to a deep well bottom that's burned dry. The moon rolls by to look at you down there with its idiot face. It's a long way back to sunset, a far way on to dawn, so you summon all the fool things of your life, the stupid lovely things done with people known so very well, who are now so very dead. And wasn't it true? Had he read somewhere, more people in hospitals die at 3 a.m. than any other time? Now, you could question my choice to read a longer quote from Something Wicked This Way Comes than from The Telltale Heart on a Telltale Heart podcast. But I just wanted to get at that moment, that mortal groan. That quote helps me understand it better.
So brilliant. I'm so glad you brought us there. This was a quote that I had bracketed in my book when I read and prepped for the pod. That paragraph ends talking about how all of the convincing he was trying to do to tell himself that it was a cricket or something else, a mouse running across the floor, that it was all in vain. I love that you brought us here because it's something we didn't really touch on when we were talking about the staying power of this story, what sticks with us. This is a rare moment where Poe's deep understanding of the human condition turns its eye toward the old man rather than the narrator and gives us insight into his condition. And I think we can all relate, even if it's just when we're kids, to that idea of like a bump in the night and you're sitting there in your room and you're not going to get up and go turn on the light to find out. You're going to wait. You're just going to wait and you're going to keep listening and you're going to start telling yourself all the things that it probably was, but there's that sneaking suspicion that it's something else, actually something worse, right? And luckily for most of us, that fear just actually lives inside of us and it is paranoid and it is like an echo of ancestral past. But I think this is a moment of real human truth in the story.
Wow, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Has the furnace always made that sound? Yeah.
Dude, I bought a new house 2 years ago. And the first couple of months of sleeping, you're getting used to all those nighttime noises. You know, I moved in the midsummer, so like warming season wasn't too far away after moving in. So I've got an old house built in 1900. I've got steam heat and the pipes knock. Those knocking pipes are something to get used to at first.
Sure.
All right. Well, I think, Randy, you were wise to try to keep us to one quote each here because I think we could probably just do an out loud reading of the story and all three of us be very, very happy. But I do want to bring it back to the narrator's state of mind. I think it's such a standout element of the story, how effectively Poe is able to bring us there. Do you guys want to highlight any of the strategies that he uses to illustrate this madness of the narrator? Here, John, I'll go to you first.
Okay, yeah. I think, Randy brought this up at the beginning. I'm talking about this concept of guilt. And the heart kind of represents the guilt. Do you feel, either of you, feel that he feels any sort of guilt for killing the old man, for taking his life? Or is it more like just a self-serving, like, oh, I'm getting caught? Because the entire time, quite an egotistical, right, arrogant guy the entire time. You know what I mean? So I know there is like a theme or a thematic topic of guilt, but do you feel like he feels guilty that he ended this man's life or that he himself is about to give himself up,
I think it's all about getting caught. I think he's afraid that he is going to give himself up. I think that his paranoid schizophrenia is contributing to that delusion. Perhaps somewhere deep inside, guilt over taking a life is weighing on him. I think that that's something that no matter how cold you think you are, somewhere deep inside, it must tear your soul. Right? But I think what he's actually, from like the middle to surface conscious level wrestling with, it's that fear that these guys are going to figure him out. I think he's quite pleased with what he's achieved in the bedroom. in the chamber, and it's fear of these police officers that's really getting to him.
Yeah.
What about you, Randy?
Yeah, when you think of those unanswered questions that come with a short story, we never get to see what was going to happen to him after the murder is complete because the officers are right there. And I don't know if he was ever going to rest easy. I just don't know. It's one of those big questions. Like, was there a plan that extended beyond hiding the body below the floorboards and thinking he was going to achieve this peace? We never get to see what he was aiming for. I don't know if he had anything to aim for. But I love that open question.
I think he's still at least deluding himself still, because theoretically, he's telling us the story from some time distant from the event, right? The narrator's giving us a first-person recounting of this night.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in his own recounting words that he seems to, like, again, be more concerned about the success of his mission being upended by the beating heart, and isn't yet displaying any sense of guilt for the killing of a man.
Yeah.
I think one thing that really stands out for me when it comes to the psychosis of this character, the madness that Poe is illustrating for us. I mean, I could take us through 4 bullet points and all the bracketed quotes that I have to go with it, highlighting the paranoia, the self-aggrandizement, the delusions, the ego. But nothing screams, "I'm crazy," like continually declaring that you're not crazy. And let me tell you why.
Sure.
So that simple device, which he repeats over and over again, you might think me mad. He keeps assuming that you think this about him, and there's nothing suggesting that anybody's accused him of madness. Certainly me, the reader, I have not, and yet he's desperate to convince me that he's not crazy. Whatever else you might think,
right?
I'm not that.
Yeah.
That sells it.
And these like rhetorical questions, like, would a crazy person do this? Plan these, and it's like,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah, you can imagine being like, would a crazy person do this? And he pulls his own ear off his head. Yes, that is what a crazy person would do.
For me, when I'm looking down at the writing strategies, how do we feel sucked in to this man's psychosis and what he's feeling? One of the best things you can do in creative writing is when you really successfully give your readers some sense of scale or time, right? So hearing about all those nights he sneaks into the room, the stillness, taking an hour to unlatch the door, waiting cautiously for an hour. That's painful to even imagine to me, like not moving for an hour under any circumstances. And he drives that home with some other great imagery. At one point, he says, "The minute hand of a clock moves faster than I do," which is a great visual, visceral thing to help us feel what's happening. And then that ties into a whole motif of watches, right? The heart sounds like a watch at first. The sound a watch would make when enveloped in cotton. And of course, you've got the death watches in the wall, the Beatles. I don't think I have Beatles in my walls, but I know the nighttime sounds of, the 21st century. Symbolically, that's still there. What are these sounds? What do they mean? What are they hearkening toward? So yeah, that sense of time and scale is one of my strategies. I've got one other one, but do you guys have any more strategies that jumped out to you for capturing this just sort of mania that he's dealing with?
I was just going to offer that the pace picks up and the fervor in our narrator when he's describing the moment where he begins to unravel. No doubt I now grew very pale, and from there things begin to kind of pick up. He describes how much more manic his behaviors are becoming in the face of these officers. And I think in that scene, it's really obvious to me, you pointed it out, Randy, that he's disconnected from reality. Whatever he's experiencing is so far outside of whatever is really happening in that room. It's hard for me to even imagine that those officers are actually sitting there, truly calm and at ease.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there's a pace to the way the narrator begins to describe things. He foamed, I raved, I swore, there's exclamation points. It feels like this, it's inside of you. And there's a distinct upping of the pace there that Poe puts to use.
Any other strategies you want to call out, John?
I just had literally the fact that he has to state how sane he is as a clear indicator the entire time.
Yeah.
But even though, I feel like even the degradation of that as it sort of goes on, I think is great. But again, it's a short story. He doesn't have that much time. The fact that he gets as much as he does, and it's like a 4 or 5 page story. You know what I mean? But no, I mean, I totally agree with you guys.
No, I love that. I just have one more I want to shout out. And, it's not something that Poe invented, but just his really effective use of repetition. We've got this clock motif, but we've got this character running on his own beat. And the way he repeats certain words, it gives us more of that sense of time, and it also gives us a window into that mania. So we get things like stealthily, steadily. Like there's always this repetition.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to pause and sit in that moment with him. And then you counter that with all that manic escalation of time and speed and beautiful stuff. All right, so we established early in the podcast that there's a lot we don't know about this narrator. Even the gender of the narrator is arguably a little bit in question. We don't know what the relationship is between the victim and the murderer here either. But I just wanted to see if we had to guess, for each of us, what is our instinct about what this relationship might be? Or if you're torn between a couple possibilities, feel free to share more than one. Kris, how about you? What would you venture as a guess for the relationship between these two characters?
So I think as a kid, I always understood it to be the relationship between a tenant and a landlord. I don't know why I had the impression that the narrator is like a boarder within this home, and the old man is perhaps the homeowner, the one to whom he pays dues. Or maybe just a fellow boarder, but I always had the impression that the narrator has taken up a room in this old man's house. I don't see them as deeply connected as like lifelong or anything. That maybe it's the way he calls him the old man.
Yeah.
Never by name, never anything more familiar. He's just more of a figure in his life than anybody that he's truly related to. So that was always my take.
Yeah, I feel like that implies that they're not blood related in any sort of way. You know what I mean? Like, I know I can say my dad is like, oh yeah, my old man, but it's not referencing it like that. He's saying like the old man, right? And we wouldn't really talk about our dads that way. I would probably say, I feel like there's an element instinctually, I would say it's like a caretaker. And for some reason, he knows that even for all of his gold, right, he knows the guy's financial standing. So, like, I'm just assuming he's there to take care of him for whatever time he has left. So obviously living in the house. The fact that he's like, oh, so I just like dismembered the head and then the arms, like implies maybe knows a lot of medical stuff. Maybe he's like, a physician in some way, but that's all I have, that's all I ever thought about him,
I like that because the tidiness of the crime, the dismemberment, always stood out to me because I, when I was rereading it, I remembered as a plot hole. Like, oh my gosh, that would make a mess. How's he ever where's all the blood gonna go? And then he mentions the tub and how a tub caught it all. I was like, yeah, I like the idea that maybe he's a medical professional and knows his way around a body and the kind of mess that you might make.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think my initial assumption, going back to my childhood, is just kind of rooted in me not knowing anything about history or having any context for 1843. But I think I always just summoned up an image of, some kind of servant. Probably when I was, a kid, I pictured some version of what I thought a butler was supposed to be or something. Someone who's like living on the property, some kind of in-house help, who's got all this access. And, that could very well be the case. I also love the landlord theory. I love this more specific, like, caretaker situation, right? Like, even if he doesn't have some sort of medical background, maybe this old man needs some medical help and support. It's a great one. However, on this read through, I tried to entertain another possibility, which I don't necessarily think is the intent. But I'm more interested than ever in the possibility that like this could potentially be like a father-son relationship, or like a grandfather or an uncle or some kind of wealthy family member, someone who's responsible for him. And the thing that got me down this road is just that response from the officers that we've talked about all night. The fact that they are there so instantly. You know, we know there's one scream. We're not able to hear just how blood curdling and terrifying that scream is, just how much it might have terrified the neighbors. But the fact that they are there like at dawn, ready to go. I was just trying to think through this. It could just be, good neighbors, thoughtful police who are on top of things. But I don't know how often you assume that a murder has taken place. And I've just got in my head, like, maybe this old man's been scared of this guy for a while. He is acting strange. He's acting erratically. Maybe he's told the neighbors about it. Maybe they've seen some of this. Maybe he's chatted with the police before. Maybe he's been living in fear. As scared as I might be in the night to hear someone in the room, I feel like I'd need more data to assume it's like someone there to murder me.
Mm-hmm.
And the old man just like, he just knows. So I can't help but think there might be a lot of conversations that have happened up to this point. Some fear, like I've got to get this guy out of my house or something. And we've waited too long. So I just love the idea that those things could all be there. Right? Anytime that someone wants to adapt some Poe, I would always be intrigued to see some different takes. Mm-hmm. Before we move on to the final question, I just want to shout out the fact that one blind spot in my pop culture knowledge is the Flanagan verse, the Mike Flanagan verse. But he has been putting out almost yearly these often directly Poe inspired, Halloween-y spooky season horror series with contemporary spins. So if you're podling out there and you're thinking, how did they go so long without mentioning Mike Flanagan or any of his stuff? I hear you. Please reach out to us at media.slash.lit@gmail.com. Tell us which series to start with, man. We've got another spooky season coming up next year, and I'm here to talk Poe year round. So let us know where to get our feet wet in that universe.
I really appreciate you always anticipating the intelligence of our podlings and protecting us from their rabid feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, they all made it to the 2-hour mark. They heard
totally
that.
Did. I hope that they did, or else they're going to miss my favorite bit. We're going to wrap up tonight with smartphone storytelling. This is where we talk about the story at hand and whether or not it would work if the characters had access to modern-day cell phones. So in this case, we can talk about whether or not the old man or the narrator have access to a modern-day smartphone. Does the story still work? Does it go the way it went for Poe? John, we'll throw it to you.
Well, I feel like if it's, let's just say if the old man, I don't know how much fun this is. If he has a cell phone, he hears a noise, something like that, he's going to be making the call or whatever. But that's no fun. In my mind, I envision like the narrator having a smartphone and just like sending out like either like these TikToks or Instagram shorts or something like that, updating his viewers. And like, it's ridiculous, but it makes sense to the type of character that he is to be like that vain about it.
Yes. Dude, yes. This is exactly my take on this question tonight. It's the idea that this sad boy is definitely on Facebook putting all this out there for days and days, the whole week. Every night he goes in and he couldn't do it. He's updating a small trio of followers. This murder never happens because somebody alerts the authorities based off of those social media posts.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the bed is on sale on the marketplace the next day. You know what I mean? He's like, wait a minute.
He's posting for a new roommate already.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the old man with so many more resources at his fingertips, perhaps some other ways to, get the neighbors involved. I'm bringing in all this other modern technology. Maybe he's got some cameras in the house. He can review that footage when he wakes up and like, oh shit, this guy has been staring through my freaking window every night.
Right.
What the hell? Right. We got some warning signs. But actually, my main take, I came at this a little bit differently than the two of you. I have so many apps on my phone that I love. I love, the social media. There's so many great things. But possibly the feature on my phone that I use the most is the flashlight.
Yes.
And, this is going to sound like I'm going off the rails for a second, as most of my comments on podcasts sound. But one thing I dislike about the streaming age, something I miss about the old days of flipping through the channels at random. Some of my favorite things to watch used to be like a random History Channel or National Geographic, like just mini documentary type thing that you'd catch the last 45 minutes of. And one that really captured my imagination once, I think it was probably literally called like Darkness or something. And it was just trying to get you to contemplate how literally dark the world used to be in a world without electricity, versus the constant and permanent like light pollution that just permeates our existence. Like, we in this day and age have never known a darkness that someone in 1843 would have known. And I think about that when I think about this dark room. And just having these other ways to illuminate it. I don't know if you could create those same conditions. I don't even know if our murderer could conceive of this really twisted, perverse plot of infiltrating this room. I think I had one word choice in my notes here. He's not just moving his head slowly into the room, but he thrusts it into the room. There's like this perverse sort of private thing. So if we get some modern cell phones in here, just simply having some more light, we're breaking up some of that literal darkness. And I don't know if the story plays out quite the same way.
Absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that you went there. I can also picture, like, we all sleep with the phone too close to our beds, probably at night. And so the old man's totally picking up the flashlight real quick instead of waiting in the dark. But I'm glad you mentioned that pitch blackness, because when I was rereading this and I was imagining that room when he talks about how he has no fear of the old man possibly seeing him. He's standing there with the door open. But we know that the windows are latched shut against potential robbers. Apparently, the old man is already somewhat paranoid. Maybe, going back to your theory earlier, Randy. He describes that pitch black, and I'm finishing a reread of The Hobbit right now. And I was just down in the caves. I was down with Smaug, and Tolkien takes a second. Tolkien takes a second to remind the reader that, like, you don't know the kind of darkness I'm describing here. Even the pitch black that you describe is not nearly as thick pitch black as what these characters were experiencing. And I love the idea that there's a purer blackness out there that we'll never experience. This Poe might be the best candidate yet for smartphone storytelling. That was a blasty blast. Thank you both.
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our special spooky season Poe edition. I certainly hope you're going to find us back here next October. I already begged Kris for a cask of Amontillado to be our next Poe story. It's my personal fave, though, as you know, I really, truly love The Telltale Heart. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got to thank our guest, John, a good buddy of mine, who I really miss. We haven't had a chance to hang out a lot lately. I miss you so much. We've been through so much together. The tribulations of life and work, but we've also survived other things together, like the films, The Desolation of Smaug, and the 20.
No.
We also sat through the 2016 Suicide Squad movie together once upon a time.
Yes, we did.
And it's just great to be back here in the trenches with you, man, but talking about something that we truly love.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, this is, I mean, just being a part of a podcast is something that's great. It's nice to meet people with like at least similar interests, and obviously you and I go way back, and even though I'm moving, this is just something we can feel free to have me back anytime, and obviously keep in touch.
Yeah, John, stoked to meet you here tonight. Randy had mentioned this pre-existing bromance that predates my bromance with Randy, and I find myself tonight equally charmed, man. It was great to chat with you. Great to have you on the pod.
Oh, man, pleasure was all mine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Good time.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a blast. We definitely want you back on the show. But before we go, this is the time on the podcast where, if our guests so desire, they're welcome to plug their presence on social media or share any work or things they have going on. If there's nothing you want to plug in terms of yourself, maybe there's just something you want to shout out to the podlings that they should check out and enjoy. John, do you have any social media stuff you want to shout out, or any other work, or just fun recommendations for the world?
No, I'm just like, something that I'm going to get into, and Randy and we've talked about this a bunch. I'm going to start my watch of Twin Peaks. I'm gonna get into that and sort of get adjusted in my new place, but I don't really do any like social media stuff, here and there. So this will pretty much be my only like social outlet, for the time being. So catch me on here or wherever I end up.
Great. Podling Madison from our X-Files episode has been rapping at my door regarding Twin Peaks, so perhaps it's in our future.
Yeah, that'd be great.
'Tis a podling and nothing more.
Kris, where can the people find you and your work? And I know you have at least one exciting project coming up.
This is true. First and foremost, I'm an actor and a voice actor. I'm a husband and a father. You can find me doing those things on Instagram at Kris_Ingersoll. That's Kris spelled like Kringle. And I have the pleasure of being the newly signed on co-host of the Batman by the Numbers podcast. We just registered a really fun episode ranking the cinematic Jokers that's live on their feeds at the time of this recording. And next we'll be talking about Joker 2, Folie à Deux. I'm really excited to get together and talk with Dan about that one. But first, foremost, and most predominantly, I'm the co-host of Media Lit, and we have a rockin' Instagram.
Ah, shut
Yeah. You can find us on the Instagram at media.lit.pod. We're having a blast since posting our Lost draft and pitch episodes over there on the socials, so I hope you'll join us.
Yeah, absolutely. You can also follow Media Lit on Twitter at MediaLitPod. You can follow me at Mr_Elaine on Twitter. In addition to Media Lit, I am also on the Pop Break podcast feed on a little podcast called Pod of Doom, which is a Black Sabbath appreciation podcast. 2 nights ago, we just recorded our episode on Black Sabbath's second album, Paranoid, that contains all the biggest hits. You've got Paranoid. You've got Iron Man. You've got War Pigs. We were joined by special guest Bill Bodkin of the Pop Break, who really wowed us with his deep Black Sabbath fandom and knowledge. So we had an absolute blast on that. Be on the lookout. It should be a really fun episode. You can also find my entertainment writing at the Pop Break. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
That podcast rocked and rolled.